The cryptography domain is seen by many as one of the most difficult domains before any training is done. My experience and my feeling is that the domain 5 of cryptography domain is actually one of the easiest domains due to the fact that it purely consists of theory. So either once you know it, you will know the answers, and it is a very basic domain at the end of the day. The cryptography domain addresses the principles, the means and methods of applying mathematical algorithms and data transformations to information to ensure its integrity, its confidentiality, and authentication. Not availability, but definitely authentication. The candidate is expected to know its basic concepts within cryptography, public and private key algorithms in terms of the applications and uses, algorithm construction, key distribution and management, and methods of attack. The applications, the construction and use of digital signatures to provide authenticity of electronic transactions and non-repudiation of the parties involved, and the organization and management of the PKI, or the public key infrastructure, and digital certification and management. And now in this domain, we'll look at the basic cryptography concepts, some algorithms, some hashing algorithms, message integrity codes, digital signatures, and then also cryptanalysis, which is the art of breaking the encryption. Now, some historical issues here. There was one I know of, the initial one was called the Greek scytale, which is basically a length of cloth that a message was put on after it was wound up over a pole with a diameter. The diameter was your secret key. So once it's wound up, they would write a message across the cloth, then take it off and send it on, and the recipient need to have the same diameter. Now, you may think, this is quite simplistic and it'd be easy cracked, but you must remember also, at that point in time, people were very illiterate, and not a lot of them could read or write. The next one is a mechanical French cipher and a book format, and you had to change some disks. We have the electromechanical, which is the Enigma, actually one of the better encryption mechanisms, and it was only cracked when they got hold of some of the plans, and also one of the machines were obtained in a U-boat or a submarine during Second World War. Then electronic from computers that we use these days, and finally what we will see in the future is quantum cryptography, which describes the use of quantum mechanical effects, in particular quantum communication and quantum computation, to perform cryptographic tasks or to break cryptographic systems. When this happens, it will be easy to crack all the current cryptography algorithms and solutions. However, in the future, it will also give a lot of computation power to make cryptography even more difficult to crack. Now, the basic goals of cryptography is to ensure confidentiality of sensitive information. We can ensure integrity of the information. So this is not the confidentiality, but only making sure that nothing has changed. Authenticity of communications, non-repudiation, and this is that the sender cannot deny he has sent the message, and the recipient cannot deny that he or she has read the message. It will provide foundation for secure access control, and also the more stronger the encryption algorithm is, it will take longer to crack. So we must make sure that the compromise of the encryption is too expensive or too time consuming. Now let's make sure that we actually all speak the same language, and we're going to look at some terms. Now, cryptography is the protection of sensitive information. Cryptanalysis is the attacking of the ciphertext. Cryptology is the study of the encryption techniques. And when seeing these questions or statements in a question exam, they do mean the same. For example, plaintext is clear text. Ciphertext is also a cryptogram. Encipher, encrypt, and encode means the same thing. Decipher, decrypt, and decode means similar. Now, a cryptographic algorithm is that mathematical algorithm that was developed to scramble or randomize the plaintext a crypto system is a turnkey solution, so it's from end to end, a cryptographic deliverable. The crypto variable, also known as a key, is the password or the variable that will be used to encrypt and or decrypt the data. And one thing you have to worry about is key management. This is the Achilles heel or the weakness of symmetric algorithms. The key space. The key space is the population, basically, meaning that the larger the key space, the longer the attack will be theoretical. And also, if we add a bit to the key space, it doubles the key space, the population, the number of combinations that we can have. This means we have an exponential growth on the length of the key. Basic crypto system includes things like codes. We'll see that. We'll have a look quickly at some substitution ciphers and how it works, some transposition ciphers, polyalphabetic ciphers, running key ciphers, and also one-time pads, where one-time pads is the only known uncrackable algorithm. Example, codes, we have colored flag for Navy ships, telegraphy. We have also Morse code and Pig Latin at school. Kids used to do this, and sometimes most probably still do. They would actually take a word and actually have an algorithm. For example, put a NY or XY at the end for every word, but take the first letter and put it at the end before the Y. And it will sound like they're speaking a completely different language. However, it is encrypted in quotes. We have simple transposition ciphers. This is where we can disguise a message by rearranging the letters or bits in the message. And this is an example of a transposition. As you can see, that's the plaintext, and just underneath that is the cipher. There are multiple ways to produce that ciphertext. However, you'll see later as well that you can actually crack this very easily. If you look at a language, and the two little distribution curves at the bottom here shows you the English language. As you can see on the right-hand side, the most commonly used letter in the English alphabet is E, then T, then A, then O, etc. Now, if you just do a transposition cipher and you take the ciphertext and use that to analyze, and you know it is English, you'll see the same distribution curve on the new letter. A simple substitution cipher can be based on the substitution of one value for another. For example, we have a shift alphabet. This is to move letters, in this example, to 3 spaces. So as you can see, it moves on 1, so A becomes D, B becomes E, etc. And as you can see, the encrypted result for the word face is IDFH. And then we can also have the scrambled alphabet, where you substitute one letter for another randomly, and you keep it that, and both parties will know the scrambled alphabet. And as you can see, the example there is a dissimilar result. Once again, the attack on this will be a statistical analysis on the letters. And if you actually had a look at the Unix environment, they have a function called ROT13, ROT13, which is a substitution cipher, and all letters have been moved on 13 spaces. Now, a polyalphabetic cipher is using multiple alphabets. This is substitution. And in this example, as you can see, if we have to encrypt the word feedback using a key of 3241, and this will be 3241, we'll do the following. We'll take F and we'll go to the main alphabet. There's F, and we have to encrypt it with the first letter being 3, and then what we'll do here is go down to 3, so it will be C. E, we'll now select 2, C as well, then another E, but now it becomes 4, and we have to go down to the bottom, which becomes A, then D, now we have to come to 1, becomes C, And as you see, it becomes CCAC, the word feed, and you do that continuously. Now, once we've actually got to 1, then we'll actually revert back to the start of the key, 3, 2, 4, 1, and once again. Now, the Vigenère cipher, which is also known as the French language cipher, not the French cipher itself, but it's also Vigenère is a French word. We use lemon as an example here as the key. So if we have the plaintext as attack at dawn, and the key is lemon, 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 and we use the lookup table here, our ciphertext will become as such. Now, as you can see, you can have various differences here. You can have different alphabets. As long as both parties have that reference alphabet, you can have numerous types of solutions and a little bit more difficult to crack. Then a running key cipher is a little bit more on the difficult side. What we can actually look at here, if we have a key here on a non-interfering basis over, and the message that we have to encrypt is this material is enciphered, what we get here is that we're going to use the following: T, the first letter in the message, and the first letter in the key, and we're going to add these two together. And this is our lookup table. So we're going to use T, so it's 19. We're going to use O as the key, and this becomes O here, so it's 19 and 14. We're going to add these two together. This will give us 33. Now, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet, so let's actually subtract 26, because we have to go back to the running key. So we're going to go around here. So our first encrypted letter is an H. Now, let's take a second letter as an example. H is the letter that we have to encrypt, so we're going to have H here. N will be the second corresponding letter, so there's N, so that's 13. So 7 and 13 gives us 20. Smaller than 26, so we don't have to do anything. We go back to 20 here, and that is U. So if you actually look at here, our second letter is U. Now, this is the most difficult example you'll most probably find. And sometimes guys ask me, now, how would you perceive a question in this regard? I don't know. Nobody knows the questions, but if I were developing the exam, I will actually give you a block like this, a message, a key, and give you 4 possible answers. And you have to select the one. Now, one-time pad, the originator and the receiver have the same pad of key values. Each key is used once only and then discarded. It's the only unbreakable algorithm. The weaknesses of the one-time pad that it requires a perfectly random one-time pads, which is a non-trivial software requirement. The secure generation exchange of the one-time pad material, which must be at least as long as the message. Now, from a theoretical point, that is the weaknesses, but also from a practical implementation point of view. If I generated a pad of a random numbers, random one-time pad, the problem is that I have to distribute this pad securely to the other side. Now, if I can distribute the pad securely to the other side, I can also distribute the message securely to the other side. So the practical application of this is limited. Now, when we develop any secure cryptographic algorithms, we need to make sure that it is secure. However, simple cryptosystems are not very secure. They are discernible. The redundancy in statistical patterns in natural language, as we saw the previous slides in the English language, and also random distribution is a non-trivial task. Now, Claude Shannon identified 2 key characteristics. It's known as confusion, the relationship between the plaintext and the ciphertext, and diffusion, which is a flat distribution in random. The basic transformation techniques, and this is important to remember, as you have some questions that will have possibly a combination of these. Substitution is one, we saw that. Transposition or permutation, compression, expansion. Now, expansion and padding is interesting because sometimes you'll have block ciphers that requires an exact block size. So it might do certain things to make sure that the block size is correct. key mixing, and we'll see that with days, double days, and triple days specifically. Initiation vectors, IV, or starting variable, SV. And exclusively OR is a mathematical operation, a logical operation that is used. And what I've done there for you is just put the XOR truth table, whereby if it's the same, it's 0. If it's 0 and 1, that's different. It's 1, 1, 0, 1. And if it's the same, once again, at the bottom, 1 and 1 gives you 0. Now, the first one we'll look at is symmetric key cryptography. And I always say to the guys, listen, symmetric means to me the same. So it uses the same key for encryption and decryption, and that the decryption is the reverse of the encryption algorithm. Now we have a single shared key, that's important. And an example I can give you, if you use PKZip or WinRAR, or you want to password protect your Word document, you will actually use a password that you'll encrypt the document, but you have to send that password to somebody else. That is a single shared key. There are many algorithms and two main classes. There's stream ciphers and block ciphers, each with its own functionality. When we look at stream ciphers, those are, for example, keystream, statistically unpredictable and unbiased. It operates on the individual bursts, so is it's in and out. As it goes out, like a serial port, that's usually where it's used, it will work on those bits. The advantage is it's a practical implementation of the one-time pad. As you can remember, the one-time pad requires a random generated pad that is dependent on the size of the message. It's very easy for hardware serial communications. The disadvantage is that it is difficult to implement this correctly. And the reason around this is start and end blocks. It's difficult to identify those things. Now, block ciphers are fixed size blocks where the plaintext are XORed with the cipher blocks, and it's sensitive to small changes or errors. And if you look at the image here, it will come up later. That is actually means XOR or exclusively OR on the system. So that's the encryption, as you can see, and the decryption is the reverse of the encryption. Now, when we look at data encryption standard, the DES, the regional DES standard, which was designed by IBM in 1974, and was based on the Lucifer cipher, optimized, in brackets here, by the United States National Security Agency, the NSA, which was trying to convince IBM to reduce the key size. Nothing more, nothing less. It is a 64-bit block size. However, if you look at the code inside, there are a thing called S boxes and a parity bit on those. And those parity bits are never used actually in the algorithm. So it is a 56-bit true key plus the 8 parity bits, whereby the initial suggestion by the NSA was 48 bits. It's got 16 identical rounds with an initial and a final permutation. Certain modes of DES, we've got block modes, we've got the electronic codebook, ECB, and we've got the cipher block chaining, CBC, in block modes. And then in stream modes, we've got cipher feedback mode, output feedback mode, and also counter mode. Now, if we look initially at the electronic codebook, each block of the plaintext is encrypted independently using the same key. So if we have the plaintext here, we have the encryption algorithm here, our key comes in, and the ciphertext comes out. Now, this image was taken from Wikipedia, Creative Commons, and acknowledge that. So as you see, every encryption has the same key and the same process. Now, the advantage is if we look at any point in time we need to decrypt this block, you'll take the ciphertext, take the key, reverse of the encryption, and get back to the plaintext. So there's no dependency pre and post, and that's important to consider things like database encryption. Then the next one is the cipher block chaining, or CBC. Here we actually see that the first block of the plaintext is XORed with the initialization vector. Next, the plaintext block, the next plaintext block, the ciphertext of the results of the previous operation is used instead of an IV. Now again, as you can see, we can actually look at additional links, but there's a dependency here whereby the plaintext is dependent on the initialization vector, but in the second part and the third part further on, we don't use the IV, but we're using the output from the block cipher encryption. This means that we have a dependency on each block from the previous one. So this cannot be used easily in database encryption. If you can look at that, if I need to decrypt a record, I need a dependency from the right in the initial side. This gives the encryption a little bit stronger compared to the previous one, so it's a stronger encryption. Then cipher feedback, similar to the CBC, once again that the initialization vector is encrypted and then the results is XORed with the first plaintext block. The ciphertext results of the previous operation is used in place of the initialization vector. Then we've got output feedback. It operates very similar, much like the cipher block feedback as the previous example, except that only the result of the first step, which is encrypting the initialization vector, is fed back into the next operation. Then counter, very similar like the output feedback, except that a counter value is used instead of an initialization vector. This also allows us, if we can actually use that counter, to make sure there's no replay attacks. Now, DES was seen as a very weak algorithm at a stage and was supposed to have a limited lifespan. Then, because it's 56 bits only and the DES cracking machines crack the passwords within 24 hours or less than that, triple DES and double DES was developed. And as you can see, when it says DES EEE3, that means triple DES encode, encode, encode. And the second example is encode, decode, encode. But also, triple DES has got keying option. Keying option 1 is that all three keys are independent. Then we have 56 times 3, which gives us 168-bit effective length. Keying option 2, which gives me key 1 and key 2 are independent, but key 3 equals key 1. And then finally, keying option 3, which has got an effective bits of 56, that all three keys are identical. And sometimes people ask, why would you do that? Why would you only have effectively 56 bits? For example, if you use DES EDE, then you encrypt, you have a ciphertext, you decrypt, you have original plaintext, and you crypt again, you've got the original ciphertext. This is for backwards compatibility. Presumably, if you've got a single DES on the one side and the recipient's got triple DES, and you will run in a compatibility mode until your sender also can go into triple DES and then change all three keys independently. Now, IDEA, the International Data Encryption Algorithm, was published in 1991 as a replacement for DES. It is highly optimized for general purpose computers. It's got a 64-bit input and output block size. It's got a 128-bit key. There's no parity bits. So compared to DES, which only got 56 bits, it is quite stronger. It's got 8 identical transformations or permutations. Then at the end of the day, AES, the Advanced Encryption Standard, there was a competition that was created for cryptographers to submit their algorithms to compete to be selected as a replacement for DES. AES is based on the design principle known as a substitution permutation network and is fast in both hardware and software. Now, Randall algorithm was initially published in 1998. This was selected as the winner. It's got a block size of 128 bits, key size of 128, 192, or 256, and depending on the key size, you have variable number of rounds related to that key size. Now, also in some audio discussions, you'll hear the Americans refer to as Randall. However, it is INJ, which makes a Y from Belgium, and it is Randall. Other examples of block ciphers includes RC5, RC6, Blowfish, Twofish, Carsafe, and Serpent. Now, RC, it's supposedly but not verified, stands for Ron's Code, version 5 and version 6, and both Blowfish and Twofish were submissions to AES, however not selected, and this was developed by Bruce Schneier. The symmetric algorithms, the advantages we have with symmetric algorithms, it's really fast. It's very difficult to break the ciphertext purely because it is such a good algorithm. Algorithms and tools are freely available. Stream ciphers are highly efficient. Block ciphers offers multiple modes. Now, the weaknesses we see there can all be related to one thing, and I'll expand. We have key negotiation, exchange, and distribution as a weakness. Poor scalability. Due to the fact if I send to one person, it's fine, but if I have to send the same encrypted message to 100 different people, I have to distribute that key to 100 different people securely. And then limited security purely because of my key negotiation at the end of the day. As you can see, key management is the biggest weakness and contributes to all these attributes. Now, when we look at asymmetric key cryptography, this is also known as public key cryptography. It uses a pair of mathematically related keys, which is a private key and a public key. It was introduced by Diffie-Hellman in 1976. Now, to create a public key cryptography algorithm, it requires the solution of hard problems. For example, the factoring of the product of two large prime integers. Now, I'm just making a note here that the prime number is divisible by 1 in itself without a remainder, and there's a sample, but some people tend to forget the schoolwork. We have discrete logarithms in a fitted field, which is a mathematical problem that has got no proven theorem. And then we've got the Rivers-Shamir-Edelman, the RSA algorithm. This is a public key cryptosystem that offers encryption, key distribution for symmetric keys and digital signature services. It was developed by Ron Rivers, Adi Shamir, and Leonard Edelman in 1977. It's got adjustable key sizes. We have a couple examples of asymmetric cryptograms. We've got Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol. We've got the digital signature algorithm. This incorporates a digital signature algorithm, the DSS. Al-Gamal. We've got elliptic curve cryptography. ECC. There's no mathematical proof for this. That's one of the hard problems. We've got the Merkle-Hellman knapsack crypto system. It is insecure. Some weaknesses has been shown cracking it. And then we've got the Chor-Rivers knapsack, which is broken using improved lattice reductions. The strength of asymmetric key cryptography is confidentiality and privacy. We've got access control. We've seen it with Novell Network. If you log on, there's an RSA signature. There's authentication, there's integrity, and also non-repudiation. The weaknesses of asymmetric key cryptography include computationally intensive. It is more than 1,000 times slower than symmetric algorithms. Message integrity controls or hash functions, a special branch of cryptography. It allows for the detection of alterations. Special values are added to the message or file. And as said, it's a special branch of cryptography that has been developed to create one-way functions. Message integrity controls can be used for accidental changes. When we have a parity, small changes will be checked. Hash functions and also checksums. Depending on how your history in computer development, if you had the floppy or stiffy disk and you put that in and the hard drive to the system trying to read it, it sometimes came back with a noise and it says CRC error, and that's a checksum. Also, we can have special hashes or algorithms created to determine intentional changes. For example, digital signature, key hashed, hash-based message authentication code, and also cipher blockchaining message authentication code, and we'll see examples of that. Hash functions, a list of hash functions are developed using division remainder, some folding, some radix transformation, and also digital rearrangements. The advantages of hash functions, of course, introduce the function to reduce collisions and increase sensitivity to changes. Now, when we talk about reduced collisions, it's all to do with if two files can have the same hash value. So the larger the bit operators of hash function, the less the probability of a collision will take place, because the key space is, or the probable population or combination of those keys are large. The hash function characteristics are that it results in a condensed representation of the original message, and you'll see that with the MD5 signature if you download a file. It should be one way, meaning that I cannot get back to the original from that signature. There's a non-linear relationship between those hashes, and this means that if I have a file with, say, 1 million A's, and I determine the hash, and I make the last A of the 1 million A's, just the last A, a B, for example, my hash function will my hash value will completely change. So there's no linear relationship between hashes. It should resist a birthday attack. And a birthday attack is all to do with the probability that two people in the room will have the same date, not the year, but the birth date, for example, the 2nd of February or the 3rd of March. It should derive the hash using the whole original message and not part of that. There's common hash functions. We've got MD2, which is 128-bit. We've got MD4, message size is 5. Now that's highlighted in red because there has a weakness on the predictability on that. The collision has been identified. Haval is variable bit length. We've got the secure hash algorithm, which is 160-bit. SHA-1, once again, also deemed insecure to use. SHA-256, 384, and 5112 is based on the number in the algorithm, the bit size, but SHA-1 is updated SHA-160-bit. However, I have seen applications such as forensic tools using an MD5 plus a SHA-1 combination, meaning that it will actually determine and write down both MD5 and SHA-1 of the file. So if there's a collision in the one, the probability that the same collision take place in both is very remote. Keyed hashes is intended to provide greater ability to prove that the message has not been altered. The problem that we have, for example, with a CRC, or cyclic redundancy check, if the message can pass in the network and we know how the CRC is calculated, I can actually go and change the message and update the CRC on the fly, so it doesn't really, intentional changes won't be caught. However, we can combine non-keyed hash function with symmetric key cryptography. So, for example, we can have keyed hash message authentication code, HMAC MD5 and HMAC SHA-1, and also the cipher blockchaining MAC. This just makes sure that the MAC does not follow the normal trend, and we can be rest assured or more secure that intentional changes won't take place. Now, digital signatures provides sender authenticity checking and non-repudiation using asymmetric key cryptography. The sender's private key is used to encrypt the hash. The recipient uses the sender's public key to check the signature and verifies the hash. Once that is successful, it knows it could only have been sent by the sender using his private key that he only knows. Key management is quite important because this is the greatest weakness of symmetric key management. There are function of key management. We've got key creation and derivation, which meaning we derive a new key from the previous key. There's key distribution and update issues. We have to have verification and trustworthiness of those keys. How can we make sure we can trust them? There's proper storage and destruction of those keys in trusted hardware. There's also an issue that we have to look at recovery or revocation of lost keys. For example, key escrow and multi-party control of keys. If I need to communicate to other companies, we have to have a sort of like a cross-certification, a key exchange agreement, and then also the determination of appropriate key sizes based on the required strength. Now, there are key derivation functions, or KDFS, whereby cryptography has function that uses secret or known value to generate symmetric keys. It combines 3 different values to generate keys. There are iterations, which means the number of times the function will be run to generate those keys. You can look at RFC 3278 or look at the NIST 800-56 documents on your pack. Now, when we look at trust and trust models, the trustworthiness of keys can be difficult. There are 2 main trust models for these keys. There's a conceptual model, which can mean cognitive, which trust and the reputation are made up of the underlying beliefs and are a function of the degree of these beliefs, meaning that I can trust another company, but just by thinking about the level I can trust in. There's also game theoretical in the conceptual model, which means that trust and reputation are considered subjective probabilities by which an individual A expects an individual B to perform a given action on which its welfare depends. Then also information sources, this from a trust model, direct experiences with a client, for example, witness information, sociological information, also prejudice and bias. Then to make sure that this all works together, we can actually look at certification to establish this trustworthiness. Now, this is part of the public key infrastructure, such as we have a certification authority, a registration authority, validation authority of those keys, and this binds a person or entity to their public keys. And then binding is done through that certification. Certified public keys are published as digital certificates, and cross-certification is important if I need to communicate to other companies and they want to communicate to me. And then once a key is not trusted anymore, it can be revoked. And this is what a PKI does, is revocation. A certification authority is a primary role of the CA is to digitally sign and publish the key bound to a given user. It manages the certificate. It will validate domains. It will act as a trusted third party and offers various classes of digital certificates. For example, if I have a certificate that's used to sign email and just a personal certificate, or a certificate can be issued to an organization which allows them to generate other certificates for their staff members. And this risk includes CA subversion. Now, the certificate authority subversion means that somebody can spoof a key, spoof a certificate, and actually have a company like Microsoft or Apple or Sun insert this key as a trusted key because they could have bypassed a registered CA. So you trust a key that's not really should be trusted. We've seen that, and we've seen a couple of companies closing down that are certificate authorities. Now, what you need to do is you need to understand that the contents of any X509 version 3 digital certificate. Go through it and actually just read what you can get from that, because the certificate will have a version, a serial number. You don't have to know this off by heart, but know the basic content that you have, your certificate, the fields, you've got your algorithm that you use, and also then the actual signature. The uses of cryptography is all to do with message confidentiality, integrity, and authentication, which means it protects against disclosure, unauthorized disclosure, of course, unauthorized modification, and unauthorized access. It also does sender and recipient authentication and sender and recipient non-repudiation. It is used for data storage, email, and also network protocols. Now, we can actually have hybrid systems, which means that we'll use a combination of symmetric key cryptography, also known as bulk encryption, which is because it's very fast. We can do asymmetric key cryptography, and then also message integrity controls. A product used extensively is Pretty Good Privacy by Phil Zimmermann, which uses CAST-28, also known as CAST-5, DSA, and AlgaMal. Now, also, you need to understand that the newer versions of these products have a selection of different symmetric and asymmetric algorithms that you can select depending on your strength requirements. Now, common secure email protocols include things like Message Security Protocol, MSP, Privacy Enhanced Mail, PEM, MIME Object Security Services, MOS, secure multipurpose internet mail extensions such as SMIME, which is mostly widely used due to Microsoft Exchange using it internally, PGP, which is also known as Pretty Good Privacy. There is a community and a commercial edition. Commercial edition was bought by Symantec, and there were export restrictions based on certain requirements, and this was subverted doing a hardcover book, exporting the cover book as education. Although there was a big issue, as Phil Zimmermann was one of the top 10 FBI wanted people in the world due to that export circumvention security. Now, samples of secure network protocols include things like secure HTTP or SHTTP. We've got secure shell, secure socket layer, SSH and SSL, transport layer security, TLS, IPsec runs at ring 0, of course, Wi-Fi protected access, WPA, and also added 211i, which is wireless LAN, WPA2, the most common and most accepted security protocol for wireless networks. Now, the legal issues around this, there are certain controls for national and international. Now, if we look at national policies and controls, it can be put into 3 rough categories: export controls, import controls, and domestic use. We've got national policies that are extremely varied from country to country, and also the American arms embargo restrictions, ITAR. The international policies and controls, a Vigenère arrangement, there's 41 states that belong to that agreement, the Council of Europe Convention on Cybercrime in 2011, and also now the European Union have got special requirements. Cryptanalysis is the process where we can actually break the algorithm, and the strength of an algorithm is dependent on the number of factors, including its key space. It's related to the bit size of that key, algebraic strength of the algorithm itself, and also finally, and usually where it fails, the correct implementation. Common weaknesses is insufficient key space, such as a short key, poor key management, malleability, poor diffusion and confusion, such as Claude Shannon said, and poor random number generation. Key clustering, also known as collision. Key clustering is said to occur when two different keys generate the same ciphertext from the same plaintext using the same cipher algorithm. Now, when we select an organization's strong cryptographic solution, it is better for us to use evaluated solutions. If you actually say you're going to develop your own, you don't want people to know what the algorithm is because that's supposed to be more secure, that is known as security via obscurity. It needs a high work factor. Work factor is the time, the length it takes to actually break the algorithm. It should also be hopefully a publicly evaluated cryptographic algorithm, meaning it has gone through the public domain and users have taken their time and tried to break this. So long it's been in the public domain, uncrackable, the better for you, of course. So then also a couple of ways you can actually do cryptanalysis. It's an art and science of breaking codes. We can attack the key. We can attack the algorithm, look at the distribution, for example, attacking the implementation, such as the whole process, and look at the weaknesses where people have implemented it using either method that's not secure enough and taking shortcuts, such as a side channel attack. And we can attack the data, ciphertext or plaintext, or attack the people using social engineering. Common cryptanalytic techniques include brute force attacks, meaning that we can use all possible combinations. We have plaintext attacks if we know what the plaintext should be and try to attack that text and see if it results in the same encrypted or ciphertext. We can have a ciphertext attack, man-in-the-middle attack, meet-in-the-middle attack, and analytical attack. This means meet-in-the-middle attack really means if I know that the algorithm has a weakness or a peak somewhere, usually at the start or the end of the key space, I would rather start, for example, at the beginning, then at the end, back to the beginning +1, end -1, because the distribution would be less in the middle, so I'd rather do the outside first. Also, a side channel attack is any attack based on information gained from the physical implementation of such a crypto system. Brute force attack is to try all possible combinations. There are two factors involved here. We've got cost and time. Moore's law says that computing power will double every 18 months. This means if I am told it will take 10 years to crack this encryption, then within 8 months it should take actually half the time because the power has doubled. It's like 5 years, 3 years later, which is 36 months, it should take 2.5 years. It's also measured in MIPS per year. And also, when we refer to RSA 129 in 1994, there was a competition to say who can crack this. In 1997, the computing power required would have been 40 quadrillion years. However, 600 volunteers in 1994 took 8 months only to crack that message. If we look at this, how the number of keys and how long it will take to break it, if we look at 56 bits, which is days, we've got that amount of keys, and it should take 20 hours or even less. 80 bits, 54,800 years. 128, you can see, to 1.5 times 10 to the power of 19 years. And then 256, which is double the size, it'll take 5.2 times 10 to the power of 57 years. As you can see, an exponential growth. Attacks, we can do the plaintext, known plaintext. This means I actually know that there's certain plaintext in the message. I definitely know that. And I will use that to attack the encrypted or ciphertext and see if I can get that chosen plaintext. So I actually know, for example, a user's name should be in there or company name. So I choose that and attack the ciphertext. Adaptive chosen plain text attacks, meaning that I'll actually move around knowing there should be at least some words in between, for example, dictionary words. If I have ciphertext only, I can do ciphertext only attack. The whole message, chosen ciphertext part of the message, and also adaptive chosen ciphertext, similar to plain text adapters, but actually just focusing on ciphertext only. Other common attacks is meet in the middle or under analytical attacks. We've got slide attacks. A slide attack works by analyzing the key schedule and exploiting weaknesses into break a cipher. Man in the middle attack. This is usually where an encryption should be set up, but before the encryption setup, I'll sit in the middle and intercept the new key that are being generated and act as if I'm a valid recipient and generate my own key for the recipient. And they both think they are doing a secure encryption. Meantime, in the middle, I've got a breakout box and read all the unencrypted text. Also, side channel attacks such as timing and power attacks, as mentioned earlier. Attacks against ciphers, there are stream ciphers. We could do frequency analysis and other statistical attacks. Initialization vector and key stream analysis. In the block, we can do linear cryptanalysis, differential, linear differential, algebraic, and also frequency analysis. Those are types of attacks. When we look at the hash function, we've got a dictionary attack and then also a birthday attack. Now, not to go into statistics 101 here, but it's all to do with the collisions in a population. If we look at how many people should be in a room so that we have 100% probability that at least 2 of those people have the same birth date. This means if everybody is distributed randomly, everybody is on a different day, so there's 365 users, and then we need 1 more to make sure that they are at least 2 of them have the same birth date. This means statistically at 100% probability there should be 366 users. However, based on a 99% probability is reached with only 50% people and 50% probability with only 23 people. This is due to the number of combinations that users have. 23 people have lots of combination between them, and the conclusions are based on the assumption that each day of the year, of course, except February 29th, is equally probable for a birthday. Non-technical attacks include things like social engineering, which includes persuasion, coercion, also known as rubber hose cryptanalysis, bribery, purchase key attack, or theft. Information hiding techniques, which is also called as steganography, and not the other one which is used in the court, stenography, but this is steganography, which is the art of hiding information in plain text, in pure sight. We can use plain text as hidden or disguised within things like audio and video files. It prevents a third party from knowing that a secret message does exist, traditionally accomplished by a number of ways, by physical techniques or null ciphers. It did receive a bad name due to hidden illegal images such as child pornography. Modern steganography extends traditional techniques where it uses the least significant bits of an image, such as a bitmap. Now, in a bitmap, we have values that's not used in the image. A slight change of the values does not have a visible effect on the contents. And I've taken a sample up here from, again, Wikipedia. We see here on the left it's original, and the right hand there's hidden data in there, but you cannot see a difference. What it does, it takes the RGB or red, green, blue values that have been altered to contain a secret message. So if RGB is 24 bits, but the display only uses each of those 8 bits, we use only 5 or 6 bits. The rest that are not used are called least significant bits, and it will use those to hide data inside. And when the application displays that message, it will only use those 5 or 6 and not the LSBs. Now, the file date and size are identical. Change can be detected through the use of a common message integrity control, such as MD5 or SHA-1. Camera Shy is a product that was developed by a group called Cult of the Dead Cows, CDC. It's the same group who developed Back Orifice. And now Camera Shy is available with source code available to download from sourceforge.net. It is used in digital watermarking. The marker covertly can embed a noise-tolerant signal such as audio and image data. It's definitely part of digital rights management. And if you look at EXIF information from photos. Now, when you see this cryptography concept and algorithms, we've gone through that. There's message integrity codes, digital signature, and cryptanalysis. A simple domain. Go through some of the theory in the documentation, the book that you've received. But this is, as I said, one of the best domains to generate yourself some good numbers in there. This, I believe, being domain 5, it should equate to about 10% of the exam. It should.